It begins in the safe haven of your own bed. The line between dream and reality blurs, and you surface, but not fully. Your mind is awake, acutely aware of a familiar geography of your room. That is, the silhouette of the laundry chair, the digital clock's red glow, the weight of your own comforter. But your body is a statue. You try to scream, to twitch a finger, to roll away from the gathering dread, but a silent, invisible force pins you down. The air thickens, a pressure, ancient and malevolent, settles on your ribcage, and from the deepest corner of your room, a shadow peels itself from the wall. It has no distinct form, only a terrifying intention. This is sleep paralysis, a ghost story your own brain tells you, a biological terror experienced by millions, yet so isolating it often feels like a secret curse. Now imagine experiencing this in 1781. There were no medical pamphlets, no online forums to find solace. There was only the terror and the silence that followed. But one man, an artist named Henry Fuseli, dared to break that silence. He reached into the heart of this universal fear and gave it a breathtaking, terrifying form. In his painting, The Nightmare, he didn't just illustrate a bad dream, he painted the sensation of dread itself. A demonic incubus crouches on a sleeping woman's torso, its gaze directly challenging the viewer, while a ghostly, wild-eyed horse bursts through the curtain, the very embodiment of suffocating pressure and haunting delirium. Fuseli's masterpiece became an instant, controversial sensation, but its true legacy was yet to come. Long before Sigmund Freud codified the language of dreams and the unconscious, Fuseli was mapping its shadowy landscapes. His work became a visual premonition of psychoanalysis, and his dramatic, darkly romantic style would echo through centuries, inspiring the Gothic drama of filmmakers like Tim Burton and psychological horrors of Alfred Hitchcock. He showed us that our most profound monsters don't live in forests or castles. They live in the quiet, vulnerable space between sleep and wake. So how did the 18th century painter so perfectly capture a modern psychological phenomenon? Join me as I descend into the tortured genius and haunting art of Henry Fuseli and discover how one man's dark vision gave a face to the fears we all share. To understand the man who gave the world its most iconic nightmare, you must first forget the image of a quiet artist in a sunlit studio. Henry Fuseli was a tempest in human form, a man whose life was as dramatic and shadow-filled as his canvases. Born in 1741 in Zurich, he was destined for the church, ordained as a Zwinglian minister, but his own intellect and rebellious spirit made him a poor fit for the pulpit. His mind was too fiery, too drawn to the provocative and the profane, a political polemicist alongside the revolutionary philosopher Johann Caspar Lavater. Fuseli was forced to flee Switzerland, setting him on a nomadic path that would define his genius. He arrived in London with the aura of an exiled intellectual, a man without a country but brimming with ideas. It was here, in the bustling, coffeehouse-fueled intellectual circles, that his unique vision began to crystallize. He was not formally trained as a painter. He was a self-taught prodigy who carried the weight of a literary and philosophical education. This was his secret weapon. His circle included the age's most radical minds: the rhetorician Joseph Johnson, the anarchist William Godwin, and the early feminist Mary Wollstonecraft, who would later develop a passionate and likely unrequited love for him. These were not just friends, they were his incubators. In their company, the ideas of the German Sturm und Drang, which translated to storm and stress movement, with its emphasis on shattering conventions, extreme emotion, and individual subjectivity, found a fierce advocate. Fuseli didn't want to paint what he saw, he wanted to paint what he felt. This placed him directly at the heart of a cultural schism. The 18th century was the age of enlightenment, a period championing reason, order, and scientific clarity. But Fuseli and the burgeoning romantic movement he helped pioneer became the embodiment of its shadow. They asked a dangerous question: what about the parts of the human experience that reason cannot explain? The dreams, the passions, the terrors, the grotesque. While philosophers like Voltaire championed the light of logic, Fuseli dared to explore the uncharted territory of the subconsciousness, the dark cellar of the human soul where monsters are not superstitious, but psychological realities. And for Fuseli, this was not an academic exercise. The haunting imagery of the nightmare and his other works was drawn from a deeply personal and likely terrifying well. He was famously a ferocious consumer of nightmares, claiming he could summon them at will by eating raw meat for supper. His friend and geographer John Knowles wrote of his nocturnal visions being so horrid and painful. His art became a cathartic exorcism, a way to pin his own personal demons to the canvas so he and we could finally look them in the eye. In the end, Henry Fuseli was a cartographer of the interior world. He used the classical training he acquired in Rome not to replicate antiquity, but to give powerful, muscular form to the formless anxiety of the modern self. He stood at the crossroads of faith and reason, of the Enlightenment and the Romantic, and he chose the journey inward, bringing back not answers, but breathtaking, unsettling, and profoundly human questions. To stand before Henry Fuseli's The Nightmare for the first time is to feel a jolt of recognition, as if you stumbled upon a forgotten but terrifying memory. Painted in 1781, it's not a scene you observe from a distance, it's a sensation you experience. Let's step inside its haunting stillness. At the center lies a woman, abandoned to sleep. Her name is Anna Landolt, a woman Fuseli was hopelessly in love with and rejected by. And here she is rendered in a porcelain parlor, her body draped in a diaphanous white gown that suggests both innocence and vulnerability. Her arm is flung dramatically back, her head hanging precariously off the bed in the traditional posture of a swoon, a step between life and death. She's not just sleeping, she's submerged and powerless. And then we meet her tormentors. Crouched directly on her torso is a gnarling, ape-like creature, the incubus of folklore. This is no mere monster from a fairy tale. Its weight is palpable, the literal and metaphorical pressure of a bad dream. It doesn't gnash its teeth or wield a weapon. It simply sits, turning its grotesque, impassive face to stare directly at us. This is a genius of Fuseli's horror. The incubus is not just haunting her, it is implicating us, the viewer, as a witness to this intimate violation. But the true masterstroke of psychological terror is the second figure. From the shadows of a heavy blood-red curtain, a ghostly horse emerges. Its eyes are rolling white voids, its head impossibly stylized, with flaring nostrils and no visible body. This is the mare of the title, a direct pun of the Germanic Mach, a demon believed to sit on sleepers' chests and the root of our word nightmare. This spectral horse is the embodiment of the hallucination itself, formless, silent, and suffused with malevolent energy. It's the feeling of a presence in the room given form. When the nightmare was first exhibited at London's Royal Academy in 1782, it caused an immediate and unprecedented sensation. The public was electrified. They were horrified, fascinated, and scandalized in equal measure. Critics scrambled for words, dismissing it as shocking and disgusting. Yet they couldn't look away. It was an overnight success of scandal. The painting tapped into a collective nerve, a shared understanding of nocturnal terror that existed just beneath the polished surface of Enlightenment society. It became a pop culture phenomenon, reproduced in prints that flew off the shelves, satirized in political cartoons, and even staged in theatrical tableaus. Fuseli had quite literally painted a meme, a viral image of dread for the 18th century. But its impact went far beyond fleeting fame. The nightmare became a touchstone for understanding psychological dread because it was the first major artistic work to visually propose that our deepest fears are not external but internal. Before Freud named the id and the subconscious, Fuseli depicted its invasion. The painting is a diagram of a psychic assault. The locked, claustrophobic bedroom is the mind itself. The incubus is the weight of repressed desire, trauma, or anxiety, the parts of ourselves we try to bury. The mare is an uncanny, irrational terror that breaches the walls of our rational mind when our defenses are down in sleep. In our breathtakingly audacious composition, Fuseli bridged the gap between ancient superstition and modern psychology. He showed that the monster in the room is and has always been a monster in the mind. The nightmare endures not because it shows us a demon, but because it holds a dark, distorted mirror reminding us that the most haunting territory we will ever explore is the landscape of our own subconscious. While the nightmare is his most famous spectre, Henry Fuseli's entire career was a deep and sustained evocation of the human psyche. He returned again and again to the shadowy frontier between the wake world and the world of the dreams. Each painting a new experiment in capturing the uncanny. In The Night Hug visiting the Lapland witches, we see a swirling chaotic vortex of the supernatural. Here the nightmare is not a private, still event, but a communal, ecstatic torment, suggesting that these dark forces can possess entire communities. In a work like Ezeline and Meduna, the terror is not supernatural but psychological, a frozen moment of dreadful recognition between two figures where the nightmare is one of guilt, betrayal, and a past that has returned to haunt the present. Fuseli's recurring themes are clear: the vulnerability of a sleep or the unconscious form, the intrusion of a malevolent other, and the use of dramatic, theatrical lighting, a technique known as tenebrism that carves his figures out of the darkness, spotlighting inner turmoil as if on a stage. His artistic toolkit was as distinctive as his subject matter. He distorted the human form, elongating limbs and twisting musculatures into impossible, electrified poses. This wasn't a failure of technique, but its mastery. He used these exaggerated, monarist-inspired bodies to convey extreme states of feeling, which were ranging from fear, awe, or even desire, that a realistic body could not contain. The world in a Fuseli painting is not the world we see, but the world we feel, compressed, distorted, and charged with symbolic meaning. The power of Fuseli's vision could not be contained by the canvas. It seeped out, influencing generations of artists who sought to chart similar interior territories. The Romantic painters like Eugene Delacroix adopted his emotional intensity and dramatic composition. The symbolists such as Odilon Redon saw in him a pioneer who painted ideas and emotions directly. But his most profound legacy is in the realm of story. It is impossible to imagine Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a story of a solitary creator and his monstrous subconscious progeny, without the visual language of Fuseli. His dramatic tableaus of swooning women and brooding, solitary figures are directly echoed in the Gothic atmospherics of early horror cinema. The twisted, gnarled trees and exaggerated shadows of Tim Burton's film, the grotesque biomechanical creatures of Guillermo del Toro, and the psychological dread of Alfred Hitchcock all flow directly from the dark well that Fuseli first tapped. Most remarkably, Fuseli was a diagnostician of the soul long before modern psychology had a name for its ailments. Working a century before Sigmund Freud, the interpretation of dreams, Fuseli's art is a preemptive, vivid illustration of Freud's theories. The incubus on the chest is the weight of the head, the primal, often repressed urges of the unconscious, invading the ego's rest. His paintings are a gallery of archetypes from the collective unconscious that Carl Jung would later define: the shadow, the animal, the terrible mother. He visualized the concept of projection, where internal fears are given external monstrous forms. In this way, Fuseli's work is more than just art history. It's a form of prototherapy. He gave a visible, shareable language to the formless anxieties that had haunted humanity for millennia. When a modern therapist asks a patient to describe the feeling of the anxiety or to draw their nightmare, they're engaging in the same act of externalization that Fuseli mastered. He showed by giving out demons a shape and a name, we begin the process of robbing them their power. His dark, thrilling and unsettling body of work stands as a permanent testament to a profound truth. To be fully human is to acknowledge the darkness within, and in doing so, we better understand the light. Though the candlelight and horse-drawn carriages of Henry Fuseli's 18th century have long faded, the silent scream that echoes from his canvases feel as contemporary as our own late-night anxieties. In an age defined by digital connection and scientific advancements, we find ourselves paradoxically gripped by a different kind of darkness, a pervasive, low-grade dread about the future, a sense of political and environmental helplessness, and the unique psychological weight of a world that never sleeps. Fuseli's work, particularly The Nightmare, speaks directly to this modern condition. He bypasses the rational, enlightened mind to tap into the raw subconscious fuel of our fears. The incubus sitting on the sleeper's chest is no longer just folkloric demon. It is the crushing weight of student debt, the suffocating pressure of societal expectation, or the paralyzing dread of a news notification that signals another crisis. The ghostly mare staring from the shadows becomes the formless anxiety of our digital lives. The fear of missing out, the threat of online anonymity, or the haunting sense of being watched. Fuseli understood that the most potent terrors are not those that lurk in distant castles, but those that invade our safest spaces, our own bedrooms, and our own minds when our defenses are down. This profound connection to the universal human experience is why Fuseli's visions have never truly left us. The power of Fuseli's art is not meant to be a passive observation, but an invitation for personal reflection. His work acts as a mirror, and each viewer may see a different reflection of their own subconscious staring back. In the shared space of this discussion, we can continue the conversation he began over 2 centuries ago. What visions from your own dreams feel captured in the tension and drama of a Fuseli painting? Have you ever experienced a moment of waking paralysis, or a dream so vivid it blurred the line between reality? How do you interpret the symbols in the nightmare? Does the incubus represent a specific stress in your life? And what form does your own nightmare take? This brings us to a final, lingering question, one that Fuseli's work implores us to consider. If fear is a universal, shapeless shadow within the human experience, is art, by giving it a face and a form, the light that allows us to finally see it clearly? Not to make the shadow disappear, but to rob it of its power over us by allowing us to acknowledge, share, and ultimately confront what we fear most in ourselves. Thank you for watching. Until the next one.